Elijah's given a message, much like the message that Samuel received. Wasn't a good one, it was a hard one, and he had his work cut out for him. Elijah experienced God in a soft, whispering sound. Some translations call it a strong silence. But Elijah knew then that he had experienced God. So what does this beautiful story in the book of Kings in the Old Testament teach you and me? I think it teaches us quite a bit. Probably the first lesson I would pull out of it is Elijah had a lot of expectations, didn't he? When he heard that message about going meeting God, he had in his mind how God would come. After all, God was going to come the way God always came, but lots of fanfare and majesty. But that wasn't how God came to Elijah. On a really human level, I was thinking about that, and I said, you know what that would be like? Imagine if you had a really good friend, and it was someone that maybe you knew from college, or you grew up with them, or someone who lived on the block, and you knew them 20, 30 years. And you always look forward to getting together with them because you could have good conversation. Maybe they were even a confidant of yours. You haven't seen them in a while, so now you're going to meet them for dinner. And you're thinking about all the things you have to tell this friend. And you can't wait to hear what this friend is going to tell you. So you walk into the restaurant, and your friend picks up a folder and hands it to you and says to you, I did something so that we don't waste any time. I typed up the dialogue we'll have. So you read your part, I'll read my part. You don't have to think about anything, just follow along in the script. Sometimes I think that might be how we approach God. Am I right? We go with our expectations. I shared with you yesterday, I fall right into that category. The talking part of my prayer is great. I could talk. It's the listening part, or in this instance, it's the not deciding what God is going to say back to me. I can't go with the expectation that if I say this to God, God is going to say this back to me. Or if I tell God, this is how I feel, God will immediately say, oh, poor Joanne, you really shouldn't feel like that. I'll take it away. It's like I've gone already with the preconceived notion or an expectation of how God will respond. I can identify with Elijah. If I was told to go to Mount Sinai, I'd want all the fanfare. So the first thing Elijah had to learn was you don't go with expectations. You have to let go of what you think you want, because none of us can control God. You and I, cannot put God in a box. But wasn't it interesting that even when God did not come to Elijah the way Elijah thought, Elijah waited? That's the key point. He waited to experience, to hear, to feel God's presence and God's voice. I think that's a real important lesson for you and me. Because we can fall into that trap of this is how I expect God to respond. And then when God doesn't respond that way, do you know what we say? He didn't hear my prayers. He didn't answer my prayers. When maybe if we could be quiet enough, we could hear that soft, silent, strong voice of God. The only way we can do that is we have to do it. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but the only way you and I can listen to God in prayer is to actually do it. We could read all the books we want, but we actually have to experience it, don't we? We have to sit in the silence, sit in the solitude, and allow God to touch our hearts, our minds, our spirits, our souls. And it's not easy, because we've all tried that, right? To be silent and let God talk to us. And what happens? You start thinking about all the things you have to do. I'm a list maker, so I start thinking about what I'm going to put on my list. Someone once told me that when you have those distractions, what you need to do is acknowledge the distraction in your prayer. You need to say, I'm being pulled out of my prayer. Because now you've taken the power away from the distraction. If you fight it and you say, I'm not going to think about that, I'm not going to think about that, what happens? You think about it more. It's like the silly song in your head that you can't get rid of. So what we need to do when we have that distraction, when it's upsetting our prayer, is to say really to God, here's this distraction. I shouldn't be worrying about whether the washing machine stopped. Or it's just downstairs that I have to take, at 10 o'clock to the doctor's. I'll get there. I'll get down there. And then it's kind of like that distraction loses its power. There's a line in Psalm 46 that says, "Be still and know that I am God." That's a great pulling yourself back. You don't even have to go any further than the first two words. Be still. And it's not that you're telling God that he's God. He already knows that. But you're reminding yourself, I'm not God. I'm not in charge. I'm not in control when I'm in prayer. I really have to be open. Perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, attentiveness, coming to God because we want to spend time with God. I think those are all the lessons we see in the Elijah story. You heard two stories this morning. They might sound very different. One was about Samuel, the future judge. The other one about Elijah, the already prophet. But there are a couple of similarities in them. They both had to let go of their past expectations, the way things were, how they wanted them to be. And once they were able to do that, then they could approach God in that deeper, different way. And again, my friends, that's what we want Lent to be. Look for the ways that you can deepen your relationship with God. Does it mean letting go of something? Does it mean letting go of how you always do something? How you always pray? Maybe it's an invitation, if you don't pray with Scripture, to pray with Scripture. Remember, your path to holiness is yours, and you're going to keep revising it. You received a sheet, has 2 reflection questions. Hope you have some fun with them. Go back and find the 2 stories that Father Bob and I talked about in the Old Testament. Read them. Put yourself in the story. What would you do in that story? Would you have left Elijah on the mountain? Would you have said to Samuel, please stop waking me up, go back to sleep? Maybe sometimes God's talking to us and maybe we're saying the same thing. Not now. Be open, be attentive, and I don't want to say try your best, because then it makes it look like we can evaluate prayer. I want to say be open, attentive, and present to God. Thank you for joining Father Bob and I this morning and praying with us. Hope to see you either tomorrow morning or tomorrow night, and that's now the next part, which is what happens when we don't always make the right choices. And we're going to do a little bit more on prayer. So, have a good day and many, many blessings.